Hello and welcome to the Second Tier Podcast. I'm Ryan Dilks and I'm joined by the Vincent Company in the Premier League to my Vincent Company in the Championship. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
Oh, Justin, a pleasure to see you, dear boy. Before we start, I need to take you to task on something with our listeners present. Because you mentioned to me yesterday about you buying a new coffee machine, which is fine. But then you revealed that the one you want to get costs £800.
Yeah,
£800 for a coffee machine.
yeah. I don't understand the issue here. I think £800 for a coffee machine is a good price for what you get. You're going to use it every day, twice a day, and it's a good price to pay for nice coffee.
But you could just get a normal one for a couple £100, couldn't you?
You're an idiot. No. That's not no. Listen, right? If you want really good coffee where it measures the beans for you, it gives you the perfect measurement, it gives you the perfect brew time, all automatically, you want a coffee machine that's going to cost a fair bit of money. Listen, don't come at me with your uneducated opinions. You do enough of that on this podcast, all right? So step off, back off, and leave me to spend my own money the way I want to spend it.
Look, I'm just worried because if you get made homeless and have to live in a box, the acoustics for the podcast will suffer as a result. And that's
But I
my
have
main
a coffee
concern
machine.
here.
But I have a coffee machine. That's all that matters.
You'll be in a box with your coffee machine. I mean, that's actually a good question to put to the listeners. What's the most expensive purchase you've had to justify?
Other than a car and house.
No, but you don't have to justify them because they're actually worth the money, unlike an £800 coffee machine. secondtierpod@gmail.com. We would prefer if your replies are football related, but it doesn't have to be. You know, is that all right with you, Justin?
Yeah, we can dig into this and really judge people, or not judge them. We don't want to judge. No, let's judge them.
I will be doing a lot of judging.
Yeah, we can judge them.
Yes, your most expensive purchase you've ever had to justify. secondtierpod@gmail.com. For Leicester City, it's Connor Cody. Welcome to the number one championship podcast. Welcome to the number one championship podcast, the Second Tier. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. So, the playoffs are here, and it's difficult to say they've lived up to the billing. It's got to be said. 2 games, both 0-0. To be fair, one of them was a very entertaining 0-0. The other one, I've already forgotten what happened in it. But we'll talk about them both very shortly. We've also got news to discuss, including Burnley's relegation back to the Championship, Luton's relegation too, which has all been but confirmed. We've also got Breitenreiter leaving Huddersfield, and an interesting development in the future of Sheffield Wednesday boss Danny Rule. And then we'll finish up with the polls and Simon Grayson's Hateful Eight here on the Second Tier Podcast. So let's start off with West Brom v Southampton, where it all ended square in their first leg semi-final at the Hawthorns. 0-0 was the final score. And as far as 0-0s go, Justin, particularly compared to the other one just moments before this game, it was an entertaining one, wasn't it?
It was. I did enjoy it. I think as far as 0-0s in a playoff first leg go, semi-final first leg go, it was a good one. I think both sides, either half, actually really did impress me. There were promising breaks. There was, I thought Grady Diangana was exceptional, but more on him later. I think there was fast counter-attacks. There was really good moments and saves. So, as far as 0-0s go, they're great. I always find first legs very underwhelming anyway, in any shape or form, whether it be the League Cup, whether it be a Champions League, a European game. The first legs are always just a bit, you're just waiting for the second leg. You're just waiting for a last minute winner in a second leg, to take your top off, celebrate round the lounge. That's all you're waiting for. Whereas the first legs, anyway. Yeah, exactly. The first legs are just a bit, it's a starter. It's a starter for your meal. You're not really up for it. You want your mains and your dessert, and that's what you're waiting for.
Yeah, it's kind of like it is a palate cleanser, I suppose, isn't it, for the real deal, which is the second leg. I mean, when you think back to all the great moments which have happened in the playoffs over the years, I can't think of any which have happened in the first legs. So you've got to keep that in mind. But look, there were good chances for both sides in this game. West Brom definitely had the better of it. They came close a few times, made Alex McCarthy produce 2 brilliant saves, but just couldn't make the opportunities count. And then at the other end, Southampton forced Alex Palmer to make a brilliant save from a deflected shot. I think there was another good chance as well. So, look, it was a good game. I thought Tom Fellows was absolutely class for West Brom. He had Ryan Manning on toast on multiple occasions. Grady Diangana had a very good game too. Mikey Johnston looked sharp on the other wing. So, look, despite putting Southampton under a lot of pressure, they couldn't convert it into goals when they probably should have, Justin?
Well, of course they should have, because that means they go into the second leg with a lead. But I think it was I was probably more intrigued by West Brom in this game, and more, I felt a great deal of promise with West Brom from this game than maybe I did Southampton, because I thought the way West Brom set up, especially sort of that first 20 minutes in the first half, I think they surprised me, because they came out of the block so much quicker than Southampton did. I know Southampton can be guilty of being a little bit slow at times, but yeah, West Brom were electric. They were fast, and then they had the better chances, I think, throughout the game. Dean Garner forcing a save from Alex McCarthy. Dean Garner, of all people, sticking his head in. Rising highs from a Tom Fellows cross was, I think, that's probably the biggest takeaway from the game for me. But he really impressed me. I thought he was fantastic. And again, there was a nice sequence in the second half when Tom Fellows, you mentioned Ryan Manning being on toast. Tom Fellows took Manning to the byline, chipped it in to the 6-yard box, or just outside the 6-yard box, and there was no one there. I just think both sides were missing a number 9, a goal-scoring number 9. Obviously, Southampton were missing Shea Adams, West Brom missing Jed Wallace. Not really a number 9, but you get what I mean, and obviously Daryl DK as well. So, yeah, I think the game just needed a striker in form, and it would have been a much higher scoreline.
Yeah, it was just missing that moment of quality from someone, wasn't it? I think it was still encouraging for West Brom, though, considering they ended the season out of form. For them to face a top 4 side and really put them to the sword, I think that's promising. Of course, you'd want to win the first leg, particularly when it's at home, but if you can't win, at least put in a promising performance. And we got that with West Brom. So, yes, you're not heading into the second leg with a lead, but West Brom shouldn't be disappointed, because there's still 90 minutes to play. And if they play just as well on Friday as they did here, they'll fancy their chances of getting through to the final. Well, Southampton, I think they'll be happy with this result, won't they? Take it back to St Mary's with the scores level, Justin?
Yeah, definitely. And especially given, I think, Alex McCarthy had to make the smarter saves, apart from Alex Palmer. But I think, obviously they get to go to St Mary's with a clean sheet. Clean sheets come very rare for Southampton, especially under Russell Martin. So I think that's going to give them a little bit of confidence, and obviously home advantage in the second leg is massive. But I think as well, the way they grew into the game is really important, because yes, they were pegged back by Southampton in the first half, even things out and started to gain control. And as I was alluding to in the preview show, Russell Martin likes to get into his players at half time, because they started that second half really, really well. But like I was saying with West Brom, and I alluded to it with Shea Adams missing, game was calling out for a striker. Ross Stewart came on, showed a flash of quality, obviously forced that pretty good save from Alex Palmer, which was outstanding. I nearly flew off my sofa.
You text me.
Yeah.
You text me afterwards saying you screamed when
just screamed. I nearly threw my phone at the TV. I was just like, "Oh, it's a deflected strike! Oh shit! Oh my god, what a save! He's got his leg!" It was just unreal. It was just unreal. It's a lot of excitement there brewing for me. But yeah, as I say, I think that's where the game's going to be poised in that second leg. Is how fit are the strikers.
Yeah, well, it was good to see Ross Stewart come off the bench, because obviously he's only played 24 minutes, I think it is, this season, since moving Southampton for several millions of pounds last summer, and obviously he's had his troubles with injuries, so it was good to see him get on the pitch and actually make an impact for Southampton.
Yeah.
But look, if Russell Martin was offered a draw before the game, I think he might have taken it. He seemed pretty happy after the game, but I'm not sure.
It's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure he would have been delighted about his second choice goalkeeper being their best player, but they've escaped unscathed, and it's a good result, isn't it? But it leaves it finely poised heading into the second leg on Friday, as we say. And, considering the amount of quality that's on show from these two sides, I thought it was a fascinating battle between two contrasting styles, Justin. You know what I mean? Because West Brom were a bit more direct than Southampton. I think that's fair to say. Whereas Southampton like to put an emphasis on possession. So it was a really fascinating chess match that we were given here.
It wasn't as much of the chess match as the other playoff game, but I think in terms of the contrasting styles, I think that's why West Brom impressed me more, because it felt like they just played out of character a little bit, because obviously with a Court-Brand side, yes, you expect them to be defensively resilient and really hard to beat and break down, but they were attacking, they were flowing, and still hard to break down as well. They were electric on the counter. In fact, there was a point in the first half where I think Brandon Thomas Asante I think West Brom had a really good opportunity. They broke really quickly. Brandon Thomas-Asante could have squared the ball, fed the ball into him. It may have been Mikey Johnson, I can't remember who it was, just off to his right, and he didn't. He had a shot and it was blocked. It was just a really frustrating passage of play because that was probably the clearest opportunity any team would have had in this game. I think West Brom showing themselves out of character a little bit was more intriguing. I think as well, importantly to mention, Kyle Bartley going off injured could be a massive impact. Obviously, clutching his hamstring at the end is never a good thing, especially if you're 30 plus, as I know very well now.
Why is it a problem for you? Is it?
I just get out of bed and my hamstring tweaks. Yeah, of course it's a problem. Imagine Kyle Bartley, an athlete.
To be fair, they've got Semi Ajayi, haven't they? Who is a more than suitable replacement if he is missing for the second leg. But yeah, finely poised, as we say. And one final thing I will say on this game, Justin, is it's just fine margins, isn't it? You mentioned there about the Brandon Thomas-Asante chance for him to kind of square it to whoever it was. But then, if the deflected shot that Alex Palmer saved, if it was deflected ever so slightly more, Alex Palmer wouldn't have been able to stick a leg out and keep it in from going in, would he? So, they're the fine margins that are just so crucial in these playoffs, and that's why we're now heading into a fascinating second leg on Friday. Something that wasn't fascinating, Norwich and Leeds. They couldn't be separated in their semi-final first leg at Carrow Road. It finished 0-0. Let's be honest here and just call a spade. Justin, this game was awful.
Listen, your football taste filter is awful, all right? If this was a Champions League semi-final between an Italian team and any other team throughout Europe, we'd be lapping it up. Tactical masterclass.
No, we wouldn't. We'd be saying it was awful as well because it was just bad, Justin.
No.
Why are you trying to justify this? You are the only... Stop trying to be a football hipster. You are the only person I know who has said this game wasn't awful.
I think everybody's speaking as an armchair fan. I'm speaking as a master tactician. The 0-0s are the best games. I'm telling you. The 0-0s are the best games, and this one was up there.
Don't start getting on your bloody high horse with me, looking down on everyone else who thinks this game was dreadful. This boring game where there were very few chances wasn't dreadful.
This was better than a 3-0. Come on.
What?
This was the right. No, because all the first legs do is they set up for the second leg, right? So this 0-0 being as bland as it was. And sometimes we just need a bit of bread and butter. That's all we need. And this was a bread and butter game. Because the bread and butter, as we were saying about starters and palate cleansers, bread and butter before your egg and chips in the second leg. Beautiful, delightful. And that's what this 0-0 serves up. A beautiful starter for what is going to be an incredible second leg. This is what I'm getting at.
Utter bollocks.
Listen, I've done well here to drag this out as well as I have. Because as you say, there's nothing in this game that could have... that was of interest, other than I think it was a lesson in game management and control out of possession by David Wagner's side.
Talking utter bollocks here, ladies and gentlemen.
Incredible.
The only positive I can say about this game is that as long as there's a chance in the second leg, it makes it instantly more entertaining than this game was. I mean, I watched the game, but then I had to watch the highlights afterwards because I couldn't remember anything that happened. And then, considering the attacking talent both these teams have, I wasn't expecting this at all. I thought someone might spark something, produce a moment of magic out of nowhere. But that really wasn't the case. It was a poor game. The most interesting thing was Illan Meslier having a real case of the jitters because he had about as poor a game a goalkeeper could have whilst keeping a clean sheet and only having to make one save. I lost count of the number of times he tried to play a simple pass and it went out of play. But look, Norwich could have taken advantage of that and they didn't. And then all three of Leeds' attackers were poor. Considering if a club was going to buy one of those players this summer, they'd have to pay at least £20 million. There was a stark lack of quality in the attacking phase from Leeds, and it was just a bad game. Unfortunately, for all the incredible moments we get in the playoffs, Justin, it does tend to balance out with the games like this, where it's nervy and cagey and not a lot happens.
Well, David Wagner for me is anti. He's anti. This isn't criticism. He's anti-entertainment in a playoff game, and that's absolutely fine with me. Because he wants to take out the drama, he wants to take out the attacking quality of the opposition, and he wants to gain control that way. And I'm all for it. This is why I'm on my high horse about it being a tactical battle, because I actually do think, Wagner stifling probably the best attack we've seen at Championship level in terms of individual quality. The likes of Jorginho, Ruta, Crescencio Somerville, Wilfred Gnonto. Wilfred Gnonto is an international for Italy, for goodness sake. They won the Euros a couple of years ago. You know, it's not a mug. These players aren't shit. They're not. The wingers of yesteryear in the Championship, are they? These players should be playing top flight, potentially European football. And David Wagner, Shane Duffy, Ben Gibson, Kenny McLean stifled them. They made them look very, very ordinary, and that's why I want to give this performance a little bit of credit, because despite it being a terrible form of entertainment, it was a really good showing of how to set up your team in a playoff game.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to deny that, Justin. I think both teams defended extremely well. It just made it a very poor spectacle, and that's my real gripe with this. But you've got to say that they did defend really well, which I think is even more strange because Norwich have been quite shaky at the back all season, and Leeds have been pretty shaky at the back in recent times as well, haven't we? It's something we've spoken about loads. So for the fact that they both came here and defended so brilliantly and basically, both these sides have some of the best attacking players in the division and are both shaky at the back. Yet we saw the complete opposite of what we expected in this game. So that's why it was just so surprising. Speaking of Willie Gnonto, I did also enjoy him, giving the Italian hand signals as he was walking off the pitch in frustration. It was, beautiful. I really enjoyed that.
Living up to the stereotype of being an Italian, isn't he? Just all hands, and that's fine. We should see more of it. Really, I don't think we get too many Italians in the Championship. So to get more of that, I think he was downplaying it a little bit. He could have been a little bit more vigorous, as some Italians are. But at least we got to see it in what was a very bland game.
We could have had more double hands, couldn't we? Double hands,
arm raised. Yeah. Get your arm high,
head back, shouting at the sky, that kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. More of that, please, Willie. Daniel Farke was unhappy with the disallowed goal that Leeds had. It's worth mentioning. Junior Firpo put the ball in the back of the net, but Jorginho Ruta was judged to be offside in the build-up. Now, at the time, the commentators acted like it was obviously right. However, I think Farke may have a case, because it's difficult to say with the camera angle, but he looks level to me, Justin. I don't know if you've got any opinions on that. The one moment in this game which is a talking point.
I think if he's level and it's the linesman's eye line, whether he's off or not, I wouldn't say he's guessing, but he's going with his gut. He's gone with his gut here. Without VAR in the lines, you can't really definitively say whether he was offside or not. So I'm happy to stick with the linesman's opinion here. It's frustrating, but at the same time, Leeds could have been much better, much quicker with the ball. Gruev could have been a lot quicker in progressing the play through the thirds. He wasn't. It was a bit slow. There are the things you've got to take away from a footballing point of view, not this decision. You might be annoyed, Daniel Farke, but if Leeds get promoted, you don't have to worry about that. You just got to worry about long delays.
Yeah, well, if VAR was there, it would have been interesting, but despite all that, it would have been criminal to say either side deserved a goal here. I don't really have much else to say about this game, Justin. Ideally, I'd just like to wipe it from my memory and pretend it never happened. It's kind of like a Men in Black situation.
Yeah, I want to say two things. I don't think there's a more glorious football ground. I didn't want to mention it, but I don't think there's a more glorious football ground in the country than Carrow Road on a really sunny day. It just looks really green. It's very yellow, obviously with the seats, and it's really green on the pitch. So kudos to the groundsman for keeping to it. And also, it's the first set of playoff games that have been 0-0 since 2011. First legs, that is. Long time.
I'd have thought it would have happened even earlier than that.
No. So yeah, we in what was an incredibly entertaining league season. With last-minute drama and goals, the playoffs were very, very bland.
Yeah. Well, they were. Do you think Norwich will regret not giving Leeds more of a game, Justin, particularly because it was at home and Leeds have been a bit shaky recently?
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, when you're at home, especially a team like Norwich who have been incredible at Carrow Road, you want to take advantage of it. It's playoff, it's knockout football. It's so significant having home advantage. I mean, how often does a team go away and win in knockout football? It is rare. And obviously, as I mentioned, given the Canaries' home record and attacking quality, maybe should have given a bit more. But I think David Wagner knows what he's doing. I have an inkling.
Ooh, interesting. We'll find out more about that in Wednesday's episode. One final thing then, Justin. Obviously, as you mentioned, both games 0-0 here. Why do you think that is? Do you think it is literally just a case of both teams not wanting to lose? Is it as simple as that? And they're just trying to avoid it at all costs?
I think with Leeds, there's a lack of confidence. Obviously, they've not been able to get in their flow for a long time. And as well as that, I think Norwich was so good. They were so rigid. They just let Leeds play in front of them. Didn't really get through them. I think it'll be a completely different game at Ellen Road. But I think it was a mixture of Leeds being out of confidence, Norwich setting up and really stifling Daniel Farke's side, and I think that was the big thing with that. But then I think with West Brom and Southampton, I thought we saw an open game. It just lacked quality in that final third. That's all the difference was in that one. So I think it's certainly a coincidence that both games were 0-0, because I think the Southampton West Brom game could have finished 2-2 quite easily.
I see what you mean, but I think the recent form of all these sides has played a part in it as well. I think they're not as confident as they have been at various stages of the season. And the fact that we have spoken about loads how all of these sides are heading into this playoffs very much out of form, I think that has played a part here, and that's why we've seen them be afraid to take risks in the final third, be afraid to pull the trigger when perhaps they should have making the right decision in front of goal, that kind of thing. So I think I would say that's one of the contributing factors to both these ties ending goalless. Hopefully it's a lot more entertaining in the second legs later this week. Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about some of the news in the Championship for the past few days. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. It's now time for us to check out how our second tier bet builders with SBK got on from Friday's preview show. So we did 2 bet builders for the respective playoff semi-final first legs. And the first one we did was from the Norwich v Leeds game. We had Norwich or draw. That came in, of course. Over 3.5 cards. That also came in. Both teams to score. Oh, God. And Crescencio Somerville to score. Bloody hell. So that one didn't go too well in that game. How about West Brom v Southampton, I hear you ask, though? So the first one we had in that, half-time result to be a draw. Yes, that came in. And then we had Southampton to have the most corners, which also came in. Then we had Southampton over 0.5 second half goals. For God's sake, Justin, what were you thinking? And then under 4.5 cards, which did come in. So that pick, Justin, is the one that let us down.
It's Alex Palmer's big foot. That's what it was.
It was. You're absolutely right. If the Southampton attack, where the one you just talked about then, if it was deflected just a slight bit more, like a foot to his left, we had absolutely sailed in with that bet builder. So that is incredibly disappointing. But we'll be back again with 2 more bet builders in the previous show, sponsored by SBK on Wednesday. But now, Justin, we've got to put the playoffs aside for a sec, because we've got to talk about some of the news from the past couple of days. And you'll be delighted to know, Justin, that we're being rejoined by a couple of familiar faces in the Championship next season. Burnley have been officially relegated from the Premier League with 1 game to spare. They're set to be joined by Luton Town, who aren't mathematically relegated but are as good a down heading into the final day. So it means all 3 promoted sides from last season have been relegated. What does this mean, Justin? Is it a sign of the times? Is it a sign of the growing divide between the Premier League and the Championship? Or is it simply a set of circumstances where these 3 sides were always going to be in trouble?
Yeah, it's such an interesting one. And a really difficult one to break down. I think, firstly, statistically, they're the worst performing set of promoted teams in history. Worst performing set of promoted teams in history. You'll never sing that. They can take that away. But is it a sign of growing divide between Premier League and Championship? I want to argue no, but logically, everything's swinging towards a yes. But then you break it down per team. The Blades are a mess off the pitch. Let's be honest. They've been trying to sell the club for almost 2 years now. Had to sell Illiman and Dye, didn't replace him. Sold Sander Berg, didn't replace him. All happened very late in the window. Paul Heckingbottom wasn't quite up to scratch. Their injury records almost bordering a disgrace, to be honest with you. And I think that, let's be honest, is that going to improve? I don't know. There was supposed to be improvements on the training ground. Have they happened? I don't know how that's going to impact injuries, but it might be a case. Burnley are again they're super unique in their circumstances, because having watched a documentary, having read interviews and whatnot, Burnley sounds like they were promoted a season too soon strategically, and that showed because their recruitment focused solely on young inexperienced players. James Trafford, big money signing from Manchester City, not quite Premier League ready. So I think with them and Vincent Kompany, I think they were just a season too soon. And Luton were always going to struggle, but they inspired at the very least, and I think they've got the ability to bounce straight back up again. As I say, I think with Luton, again, they're such a unique football club. Budget's so small at Championship level, let alone Premier League level. So it's always going to be difficult. So I think I want to say there's not a growing divide. It feels like there is, but at the same time, all these teams have a very, very particular set of circumstances working against them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Justin. I also want to say that it's not about a growing divide. However, there's a good chance next season that the 3 promoted sides will all be relegated again in the Premier League next season. We've mentioned Leicester's position off the pitch plenty of times in recent weeks. I fancy Ipswich to cause a few surprises next season, but of course they're playing cash up in terms of their own financial power. And then we're still waiting to see who else goes up, but there's a good chance that it does happen again. 3 promoted sides come down instantly. So I think it is just indicative of the huge chasm there is financially between the 2 leagues, because the knock-on effect of the 3 promoted teams coming straight back down means all the teams who have stayed up will have had a minimum of 3 years worth of Premier League money by the end of next season. So they'll have plenty of money in the bank, and they've also had plenty of time to assemble a Premier League squad and build upon that. So that's unfortunately the state of play. And this is why this financial package, which the Premier League have been refusing to agree on with the EFL, is so vitally needed. In terms of quality, I don't think there is that big a gap between the top of the Championship and the bottom of the Premier League. If they played in a one-off game, I would fancy the Championship side to win quite a few of those games over the course of a season. But that's the issue. Over the course of the season, newly promoted sides are going to come unstuck because they primarily don't have a deep enough squad. And that's one of the big issues that they've got, unfortunately, and in terms of quality, that in depth as well. So that's the issue. And hopefully it's not a sign of things to come, because otherwise we'll just end up with a closed shop in the Premier League, and that'll be pretty boring, won't it? You briefly mentioned Burnley there, Justin. What have you made of their relegation? Has it been surprising how bad they've been, considering they were so good last season? We've got to keep that in mind, haven't we? They were so good last season, so the fact they got relegated pretty comfortably in the end is a bit disappointing, to say the very least.
Yeah, they walked the league, didn't they? They did, without really too much trouble. I don't know if it's because the Championship was lower on quality, and it allowed them. But at the same time, the transition that Burnley went through was incredible. Going from a Sean Dyche side to a Vincent Kompany possession and attacking based team. So yeah, that transition was massive. But I think naivety has just cost them. I alluded to it. They're a young team. Vincent Kompany is a young, inexperienced manager compared to others, and as well as that, in terms of tactical setup, I mean, Burnley was so good last season. They didn't have a plan B, did they? They didn't have a plan B. They just had plan A, because plan A worked so well. So naturally, is Vincent Kompany going to resort to plan B in the Premier League? No, he's going to stick with plan A because it was bloody brilliant. But it wasn't brilliant. It was a bit shit. Burnley were a bit shit, or very shit, to be very, very blunt. And I think, to be honest, I think Kompany was also quite lucky to keep his job. And he will be under pressure next season to get Burnley going again. I think he will, but it was a surprise to see how naive they were. Because Kompany, despite being an inexperienced manager, is a very astute footballing mind. Yeah,
well, it was around this time last year that I tipped Burnley to stay up and perhaps even finish in the top half. And that's obviously not gone very well. However, to be in my defence, I didn't expect for them to have a really poor summer transfer window, as you were alluding to earlier. A lot of inexperience signed, and they didn't really replace the players who they lost last season, who were on loan and were so key to them getting promoted in the first place. And then the players that they did bring in, I don't think particularly improved the squad. I actually think their first 11 in the Premier League was poorer than the one that got them promoted, in my opinion. And I also didn't expect Vincent Kompany to not adapt at all to how Burnley were playing. And he quickly found out that it's a lot more difficult playing company ball when you're in a relegation battle to top end of the Championship. So a very underwhelming season for Burnley, considering the multiple points deductions other sides had and the standard of the teams down there. It was a great opportunity to stay up quite comfortably, wasn't it? But they didn't capitalise on it. Injuries didn't help either, to be fair to them. But they should have had a much better season. So, yeah, it's been I mean, we're not a Premier League podcast, so, it's not something we've been covering all season.
Leave it to someone else.
Looking from the outside in, it's very disappointing that we saw this Burnley side absolutely tear the league apart last season and then produce this season straight afterwards. Very frustrating. And well, you alluded to this not too long ago, Justin. Do you think they can bounce back next season? Make it 4 seasons in a row where they've either been promoted or relegated?
Yeah, the yo-yo term's not really sticking with Burnley as it does Norwich. Maybe unfairly, but at the same time, I do think they can bounce back. As I say, I think company just It's quite easy. It's very easy for me to say they're coming down from the Premier League. Got the Premier League riches, Premier League wealth. Good squad. They could do it again. But they've spent a long time losing. Confidence is going to be zapped. It's going to need rebuilding over the summer, and they're going to need to rip the Band-Aid off and go again, and maybe get rid of some players who have impressed previously, but ultimately need to be moved on. I mean, can the company get the best out of Benson and Zaroury again, like he did in the Championship as last season? The question remains to be asked. So, yeah, I think they can bounce back, but there's a bit of scepticism there. I don't know why.
I think that scepticism may be misplaced, to be honest, Justin. I think there's a great chance that Vincent Kompany has a bit of a Daniel Farke situation where he gets a team promoted, has a pretty miserable season in the Premier League, and then bounces back once again. Burnley will definitely be one of the favourites to go up next season, even possibly the favourite. Even though I think he's been a bit naive in the Premier League, Kompany's a class manager, and I think will go on to coach at a higher level despite this pretty major setback. And then, despite the squad not being good enough in the Premier League, it's very strong at Championship level. There's still a strong core of the players who got them promoted last season. So, simply put, they'll be in the conversation for automatics next season. I'm pretty confident about that. Whether they actually do finish in the top 2 or not, a lot will depend on having a much better summer in terms of their transfers than the one that they had a year ago. So that's the major thing. I did have quite a bit of confidence in their recruitment, hence that was one of the reasons why I thought they would do quite well in the Premier League this season. But obviously it's not happened, so that's something they've definitely got to recover from. Luton also virtually down. It was always going to be difficult for them to stay up with their financial power, want it, Justin, but they've given a really good account of themselves and did a lot better than a lot of people thought they would. It sounds patronising saying that, but there's no other way of saying it, really. They've done a lot better than many people would, because many people thought they'd just finish bottom, didn't they? I'm quite optimistic about their bouncing out the first time of asking, though. Justin, what about you?
I am, because I think they've got the right blend. I think Rob Edwards is an incredibly talented manager. He's also got a lot of empathy as well. Incredibly emotional guy. And I think that goes a long way in football, because not only can your players relate to you, you can generate a squad that has togetherness that no other squad can match, but also your fans can get behind you as well, and especially after a relegation, it's very rare that's the case. So I think from an intangible point of view, I think that's going to work very much in Luton's favour compared to the likes of Sheffield United and maybe even Burnley. As for the playing squad, I think the playing squad probably talent-wise isn't as good as others by any means, not even now in the Championship, but I do really think there's that attitude and mentality to really prove people wrong and go again. So I think that's going to be the burning desire for Luton to go straight back up again. And I am optimistic, but again, I think it's going to be a competitive one. Coventry, I've got a nice fancy feeling about them next season, for example. So I think it's going to be a season where we see sort of maybe potentially 4 or 5 going for the automatics, which is what we want. It's what we want.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a bit too early to start speculating about that, Justin, but I appreciate your optimism. But
it's a feeling.
It's a good feeling to have, and I like that. I think, well, first of all, I'll say I'm very excited to be talking about Luton again, because I'm a big fan of just the way they run their club. Why are you laughing?
Because you need someone else to throw your adoration for. Now McKennan's gone and Ipswich have gone. You need somebody else now. Luton are going to get it.
Well, put it this way, I predicted Luton to get promoted last season. I predicted Ipswich to get promoted this season. So It's clearly a good thing to have. That Ryan Dilks is a fan of you. But look, Luton Town are pound for pound the best run club in the country, aren't they? Their recruitment is some of the best in the country. They got promoted on a small budget. Imagine how they'll do now that they've got the added injection of Premier League money. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see who stays and goes. One would assume Ross Barkley will leave. Lokonga won't be staying. However, there's a squad there which is made up of top-end championship players, isn't there? Yeah. And then that's when they're at a normal club, not a club like Luton where they, as a unit, just really work together particularly well. And, of course, they've got a great and very handsome manager in Rob Edwards who deserves a lot of credit for the job he did in the Premier League. Even though they're going down, he still deserves the plaudits. So I'm quite confident at this early stage of Luton bouncing back, and I think they'll be well in the conversation for the top two. I'm sure about that. Even though their budget may not be as strong as some other teams in the division next season, they will still very, very much be in the conversation, I'm pretty sure. Let's move away from the newly relegated sides, Justin, talk about a team which has been relegated from the Championship this season. That's Huddersfield Town. They've confirmed manager Andre Breitenreiter has left the club. In a statement, they said it became evident that it was in the best interest of both parties. I'm going to assume it was particularly the interest of Andre Breitenreiter because he didn't want to be there anymore. Justin, he comes in, 2 wins in 13 games, gets them relegated, then buggers off. Not a bad gig, eh?
What a tosser. Honestly, I've seen quite a few players speak out cryptically of Breitenreiter. Bergzorg
critically.
Yeah, they were cryptically criticising old Dre. It was Bergzorg who put out a critical post on Instagram of his tenure at Huddersfield, and there was some weird virtual finger pointing potentially at the outgoing coach, and there's a couple of players who interacted with it, like Sortable Thomas and Jack Ridoni. Safe to say, Breitenreiter didn't come across as a popular figure among the players, considering how often he threw them under the bus. So I think as far as statements go, it being in the best interest of both parties is a very accurate parting statement for Huddersfield.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the Bergzorg post, but in the meantime, I've got to say, I've been surprised at how many Huddersfield fans have been wanting him to stay. No. Whenever I look at a tweet from the Huddersfield official Twitter, it's constantly people just campaigning for Breitenreiter to stay, because Huddersfield were awful under him. He seems to have alienated... Yeah, they did. They genuinely did. He seems to have alienated many of the players and quite clearly didn't want to be there after getting relegated. So why would you want a manager who quite clearly doesn't want to be there? Why would you want him managing you?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, particularly when you've just been relegated. So, and I keep going on about him, but it's strange to see how many Huddersfield fans were so anti-Darren Moore, but so many have been pro Andre Breitenreiter, when Darren Moore actually had a marginally better points per game record than him.
It's an odd one. I think a really important thing to point out as well is when you're in a relegation battle, it's not style over substance. It's substance, it's togetherness, it's creating a squad, and that's why the appointment of Neil Warnock last season worked, or season before last season worked. Yeah, that kept a really poor squad in the Championship. Breitenreiter came in, tried to play football his way, didn't work, and he pissed a lot of players off doing it. It's a big thing. So it was a bad appointment from the ownership again, and there's no accountability again from them. So I think that's a key thing. But yeah, it doesn't go with any interest from me. He's a really bad appointment.
Yeah, it was. It seemed like a good appointment at the time, in fairness to them, but he came across at times like he was a bit too... like he thought the Huddersfield job was below him.
And the Championship was below him. That's the impression I got as well. Yeah, like the Championship and Huddersfield were below him. It's just like, no, the Championship's the best league in the world. Get lost, Dre. Yeah. Go back to bloody managing in the Bundesliga.
Okay. Right. I thought you were going down a dodgy path. But yeah, I agree, Justin. Huddersfield are better off without him, in my view. Why cling on to a manager who's not bothered about the club and seems mainly interested in his own self-interest? It doesn't make any sense to me, so that's why I was so confused that so many people wanted him to stay. And then, Justin, one manager who is not apparently moving on is apparently Danny Rule. The Sheffield Star says any club who wishes to buy him out of his Sheffield Wednesday contract will have to pay £5 million in compensation. It will cost a further £5 million to bring all his staff with him as well. He has been linked with the Hull and Sunderland jobs, but off the back of this news, Justin, one would assume he's going to stay at Hillsborough.
Well, how often do we criticise Chansiri? I don't think we said anything positive about him. And I don't know if he had any involvement in this contract, but fuck me, has he played a blinder here. £10 million. £10 million he could potentially net if a team's willing to pay it. FYI, I don't know why I said that. Very, very office talk. No one's going to pay it in the Championship. Sunderland Hull not going to pay £10 million to bring Danny Rule or his coaching staff to the Championship. So, yeah, they've absolutely played a blinder there. Fair play, Chansiri. We did not know what you were cooking over at Hillsborough. It was a very, very good move from you.
Yeah, well, it's a move that looks very good in hindsight. I think you may be giving him a bit too much credit here. Because am I right in saying that if it costs £5 million to buy him out of his contract, then wouldn't it have cost Sheffield Wednesday £5 million to sack him?
No.
Because keep in mind, this was Danny Rule's first job in management. He could have easily gone pear-shaped. So that seems like quite a risky thing to do, if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what the clauses are. Obviously, if you're buying him out of his contract, then yeah, it probably would cost £5 million to sack him. But if it's actually just a clause in his contract to open up negotiations, then it would be a case of a club would have to activate the clause to speak to him. So I don't think it's a case of. I don't think that would be the case of why Chansiri hasn't paid a blinder.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
that's what I mean.
Fair enough. You can be facetious about it. It's fair enough to question Chansiri's business sense, but yeah, it's a good point to raise.
Yeah, well, at this stage, you're right. It looks like a really good position for Sheffield Wednesday to be in because they've got this manager who is coveted by so many different clubs, and they may not be able to get him unless they want to fork out a pretty large fee for a manager. I think I saw someone on X say that it would be in the top 10 biggest amounts anyone has ever paid in compensation for a manager in the history of football.
Graham Potter. Graham Potter
was he was the most, and then there's quite a big drop off to the next one. So that's the kind of figures that we're talking about here. But I mean, it's still not completely out of the question that Rule could still go because if he wanted to force a move away, he could resign, which would obviously mean he would miss out on a lot of money. That's still a possibility because if they have a poor transfer window or something like that, he might resign out of frustration, which is always a possibility with Sheffield Wednesday. Otherwise, he would need to be really sold to move on to another club, wouldn't he, and miss out on all that money. So it sounds like Wednesday are going to keep hold of him, which is a great bit of news for them, and that means that they'll, fingers crossed, be heading into next season with one of the most talented young coaches in the English game right now, and I think that's very exciting, Justin. Let's do the polls, shall we? This is the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter because we want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the Championship. So the first question we asked was this: who will finish highest in the Championship next season? Burnley, Luton, Sheffield United?
I'll go with Luton.
I think I'll go with Luton as well. I think I actually will. Just very well run, aren't they? And they also finished higher than Burnley, which is and Sheffield United for that matter. So that's quite a crucial part as well. Our listeners disagree though, Justin. 61% of them said Burnley, 33% said Luton, only 6% said Sheffield United. Poor Sheffield United and poor producer Finn, who is a big Blades fan. What do you think the playoff final will be? Leeds Southampton, Leeds West Brom, Norwich Southampton, Norwich West Brom. I'm going to hold your answer there, Justin, because we'll have more of a talk about that in the preview show on Wednesday.
I've always answered polls. I don't think I've missed a Sunday poll.
Not on this occasion. You're not answering this one, big boy. 49% of people said Leeds Southampton. 22% said Leeds West Brom. Norwich Southampton got 17%. Norwich West Brom got 12%.
What about Norwich Leeds?
That can't happen, can it? You made me question myself then. For God's sake. And finally, what's the most you would pay for a coffee machine? £100, £300, £500. Would happily pay over £500. What would you do, Justin?
I would happily pay over £500.
Mug. £100 got 65%. 24% said £300. 4% said £500. Only 7% said they would happily pay over £500.
Majority of our followers are probably 18 to 25. Can't afford it. That's their fault.
What a Tory. Now it's time for this.
Hi, Simon Grayson here.
Yes, it's time for Simon Grayson's Hateful Eight, people. So I'm going to ask Justin to name 8 of a certain subject. All he's got to do is name all 8. So, for example, if I would say name Steve Bruce's last 8 clubs, and he would say Villa, that's 1 down. Then Newcastle, that's another down. But if Justin were to then say Weymouth, he would lose a life. So all he needs to do is give me all 8 answers, and you can get involved in the fun by sending in your hateful eights for either Justin or I to answer. Send them into secondtierpod@gmail.com, and you could get a shout out the next time we do a hateful 8. This one is from Callum Marsh. He says, "Hi virgins, I'm glad Justin finally came to his senses and agreed Kieran McKenna should win Manager of the Season. My suggestion for Simon Grayson's hateful 8 is to name the last 8 managers to win Manager of the Season." Thank you for that, Callum. So that's exactly what we're doing here today, Justin. Obviously, we haven't been doing this long enough to have 8 winners in the second tier Manager of the Season award. So we're doing it based off the LMA Manager of the Year winner in the Championship. You pull that face, but the reason I've done the LMA is because bizarrely the AFL awards don't do it in the Championship every season, which confused me. The LMA is the only one, I think, who have been doing it for a bloody long time now. But as I say, the last 8 managers to have won the LMA Manager of the Year award in the Championship, anyone who's done it once only counts as 1 answer. You've got 3 lives on this one, Justin.
This is hard. I don't like this.
It is.
I don't like this at all.
You just got to think back over the years, mate.
Yeah, I know, but again, that falls flat. I think I'll go with Daniel Farker. That's the first one.
Daniel Farker is correct. He won it after finishing top of the league with Norwich in 2021. It's the only time he's won it, by the way, if that's a slight clue, perhaps. So that's 1 down, Justin.
Does this year count?
No.
Right, okay, I'll go with Bielsa.
He's not been awarded yet this year for a start.
Yeah, fair play. I'll go with Bielsa.
Bielsa is correct. He got it after winning the league with Leeds in 2020. So that's 2 down, Justin. You're a quarter of the way there.
8 years. Nuno Espirito Santo did an absolute number with Wolves, but Cardiff finished second that season. That was a ridiculous job from Neil Warnock. I'll go with Nuno.
Nuno is correct. Yes, you were right. He was recognised after Wolves won the league in 2018. That is absolutely spot on. So you've got 3 down, Justin. 5 to go.
3 down, 5 to go. I can't believe Neil Warnock didn't win it that year. I'm just going to point that out there. What a travesty.
I've got some comments to make after this, but
okay.
I don't want to give anything away. You've got 5 to go, Justin. Come on.
Yeah, Chris Hughton.
Chris Hughton is correct. He's actually won this award on 3 separate occasions, including back-to-back years with Brighton in 2016 and 2017. I'm not sure if that's a clue or not, Justin, but something to put into your thinking. You're halfway there, son.
I don't know why Marco Silva would have won it with Fulham the year they went up, because they weren't as good as their squad was. Thomas Frank took Brentford up that year, but it was like this. He should have got them up a year before. I'll hedge my bets and I'll go with Marco Silva.
Marco Silva is correct. He got it after winning the league with Fulham a couple of seasons ago. Also got to be said, Luton got in the playoffs that season. So, yeah, I'm not saying I disagree with you, Justin. That means you have got 3 to go. 3 lives remaining still.
Last season's an intriguing one, isn't it? Did Vincent Kompany?
Yes, Vincent Kompany did win it. He was given it after winning the league with Burnley last season. It was actually pretty straightforward. I don't know why you didn't come up with that sooner, Justin.
Neither do I. Been talking about
2 to go.
2 to go. I think I've got the Silva the season before that. Bielsa was the season before that. Crikey. Ooh, now I'm out.
He's on the ropes.
It's the 18-19 season. But who won it? Bielsa came fourth. I think Scott Parker took Fulham up that year. I can't remember who finished top. Shit.
You're getting your years very mixed up here.
Yeah, Daniel Farker won the league that year. Never mind. I'll go with Aitor Karanka.
Aitokarenka is incorrect, I'm afraid, Justin. That's 1 life down, 2 lives remaining, 2 answers to go.
How's about Thomas Frank?
Thomas Frank is also incorrect, I'm afraid. You've got 1 life remaining, 2 answers to go. But Justin does have his arms raised, ladies and gentlemen. Celebration.
My arms are aloft. Valorant Ishmael.
No, his confidence was
Bastards.
misplaced, ladies and gentlemen. Justin, unfortunately, you've gone from looking like you're doing pretty well there to falling quite dramatically.
I've done a Leeds.
Yeah, I'm surprised that you didn't get one of these, considering you basically explained how the whole league went that season. The Daniel Farker season, where they won the league with Norwich in 2019, Leeds finished 3rd. Who came 2nd?
I can't remember.
Sheffield United and Chris Wilder.
Oh, bloody
Justin,
Wilder.
yes.
Yes.
He got it with Sheffield United after getting them automatically promoted in 2019 before going on to complain about referees eating sandwiches. And then the final manager you were looking for was, of course, I actually thought you said it because you said, how's about Thomas Frank? Eddie Howe was correct. He won it after guiding Bournemouth to the Championship title in 2015. I was going to say that if you just went for managers who won the league, you wouldn't be too far off with this.
That's
because that's what the LMA seem to do with their manager of the years. Just generally give it to the manager who won the league. But Justin, you've fallen foul to Simon Grayson's Hateful Eight. How does that make you feel?
I actually don't feel too badly about that because I think I mentioned managers who deserve to win manager of the season in their respective years, but the LMA seemingly just hand it out to everyone in the league, which is a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that, Justin. But there we go, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. This has been our reaction to the first legs of the playoff semi-finals. Here's to hoping the second legs are a lot more entertaining. What we'll be doing is we'll be doing a preview show on Wednesday, looking ahead to those 2 games. So we bloody look forward to seeing you for that one. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.